Hey, 4C divers, welcome to Facebook Live. Thank you for tuning in tonight. It is April 22nd. It is a Thursday, and we have a great presentation planned out for you guys tonight. If you are aware, or if you're not aware, the month of April is our rec month. So what we do in the month is we give you great presentations like the one tonight, and we give you lots of great information about how to dive wrecks and other places besides South Florida. And we also have a great landing page on our website that allows you to go and discover more about diving wrecks, about the gear to get you there. So if you want to go ahead and look at that, go to www.force-e.com. You can go right there on the main page and you'll see Get Wrecked. That's our page, and you'll see really cool items located on there that you can buy, and also some other cool videos about wreck diving. Also, don't forget you can take a wreck diver course with one of our 4C instructors. We are really excited to be able to offer this course for you because it gives you more information about skills you need to get you diving on wrecks. All right, let's do a check-in. Everybody say hello to us. Where are you listening in from? Write it in the comments section. Are you here in South Florida? Are you in Florida? Are you outside of Florida? Are you outside the US? We want to know. Say hello to us in that comment section during the presentation. You can also write any questions that you might have about the presentation, and we will answer them. Oh, Bill, you guys are back up north. I'm so sorry. He was just down here in South Florida, and now he's back up in the tundra of Iowa. All right, some other things to check in. Make sure that you go to our website, go to the event tab, and find tonight's presentation. You want to get on the Eventbrite link because you want to register before 6:45 because we have a couple of things to raffle off tonight. One is going to be one of the Reef SMART Guides books and a new release. We don't even have them at 4C yet. We will, though. Oh gosh, this is a huge poster. Okay. This ID of South Florida. So guys, these are our raffle prizes tonight. Woohoo! So all right, let's go ahead and let's go with our guest presenters. We've got the guys here from Reef SMART Guides. They're going to talk to you about how they map the wrecks and reefs in South Florida. Take it away, guys.
Hi there. I'm Ian Popple, and this is
Pete McDougall.
We're going to get the main screen set up there.
There we go.
There we go. Wonderful. So yeah, we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about the mapping work that we do of reefs and wrecks and how we create our 3D images that you may have seen both on the cards and also in the guidebooks, one of the ones that Nicole was holding up there. So we'll give you a little bit of an overview as to how we got started in this whole line of work. It all started here. This is the soon-to-be wrecked Spiegel Grove in the Florida Keys. Obviously, before it went down. Now, a number of years ago, our business partner, Otto Wagner, who's not with us tonight, he was diving the Spiegel Grove, and he dropped down onto that wreck with very little idea of what to expect. He wasn't aware, for example, that the wreck is over 500 feet in length. He wasn't aware that there were multiple buoys along that wreck. And he wasn't aware that the maximum depth was about 135 feet. And you may think, well, clearly he didn't get the best dive briefing. And that may be true. But even when you do get a good dive briefing, sometimes elements can be missed. Sometimes there can be inconsistency. Sometimes those inconsistencies even occur between different dive professionals who work for the same operator. Now, the other thing is that oftentimes the dive briefings that you may get on a dive boat, this is a liverboard, looks something like this. It's basically a drawing on a whiteboard. And this is actually not a bad one. You know, there's some shading in there. There's a reef surrounding the wreck. You can see quite clearly what it is. And there's even some depths that you can use to sort of help understand the site a little bit better. But not everyone can draw this way. And in some locations, as some of you may have been to Bonaire, and also in places like Grand Cayman, you can shore dive, which means that you can access some of these sites without getting a briefing from a dive professional. So we started to realize that, maybe there was a way that we could produce maps that people could take into the water with them. Or if we could create enough maps, we could create a book of these maps that would really help people understand a little bit more about the site that they're about to explore before they get into the water. So Otto was having these realizations as he was coming up from his dive on Spiegel Grove. Pete and I were having similar kind of conversations, and we all met together in the diving mecca of the world in Montreal. And we figured we could try and do something about this if we all work together. So we created Reef SMART Guides, and we wanted to create maps that look something like this. This is actually an image of the same site that was on the previous slide. So Oro Verde here. This is our map of that same site. It's actually a debris field surrounded on several sides by reef. And what we really wanted to do was create maps that look almost photorealistic, so people can, they're looking at this map. It's almost like the surface of the water has been peeled off, and they get this perfect view down onto the reef, so they can see very clearly what it is that the site looks like. So just to recap, our goals in starting Reef SMART Guides were to try and go one step further than hand-drawn images on a whiteboard. We figured that if we did these maps, we could help improve the safety of divers and snorkelers in the water. We wanted people to get the most out of their experience, the limited amount of time that they have underwater. So understanding that site as much as possible before they get into the water, we figured would be an advantage to them. And we wanted to try and integrate some elements of education into the site as well. As many of you will know, certain reefs, a lot of the species that you see there are very site attached. In fact, some dives often are named after the creatures that you'll see there, sometimes even named after individuals of a species. So there's sites that I'm thinking of in the Cayman Islands. Waldo's Reef is a site in Grand Cayman that is named after a green moray called Waldo. There's sites in the Bahamas that I've been to that are named after Nassau grouper that have been there and consistently there for long enough for local dive operators to name sites after them. So we figured we could integrate species that are commonly found at these sites and use that as an opportunity to start talking about those species and the behaviors to help people learn a little bit more about the coral reef ecosystem. We wanted to also provide a memento of the experience. So producing underwater cards that people could take in the water might be something that they could then bring back home with them and show other people. And with a bit of luck, some of those people may be non-divers, and that might encourage them to actually get into the water and explore those sites as well, to help bring more people into this world and train them to dive or allow them to explore by snorkeling. So what are the methods that we can use to map coral reefs? This is where we started from. We had our idea. Now it's like, okay, now let's make this a reality. How do we figure out how to map coral reefs? And obviously the first step for us sitting down and trying to figure this out was like, well, sonar. Sonar works very well. It's a technology that exists out there. Let's see if we can use that to map reefs. But the problem with sonar is that it's quite costly. It produces a decent enough map of the reef, but it's very time consuming. It requires a dedicated boat to basically go back and forth, what we call mowing the lawn, just going back and forth over a reef and building up an image over time. And the thing is that the image that is created from sonar is not always ideal. This is a shipwreck lying on a sandy seabed. There's a bit of reef over the far side here that you can see. And the shipwreck lacks a lot of detail that we wanted to get from our maps. You can see that the bow of the shipwreck here towards the right-hand side of the screen just drops straight down as if it's a vertical line straight down to the seabed, but it actually obviously curves around, but that's a shadow zone that the sonar is not able to see. So we're not getting a true representation of what the site looks like. And a lot of the detail on the deck of the ship is missing as well. What we were really trying to do was produce something that had a little bit more photorealism, something like this, which is the Vandenberg. Some of you may be familiar with this site from the Keys, a photorealistic image where people can look at it and go like, right, I understand immediately what it is that I'm looking at. I'm going to search for these various features. I'm going to go around this smokestack. I'm going to take a look through the bridge. I'm going to go to the bow, and you know what you're going to see. You don't have to try and interpret an image that is not quite clear enough. We wanted these images to be so attractive that you'd want to put them on your wall. So we were trying to go for something that wasn't just a great visual image of what the site looked like, but it was almost art. And that's where our creative director, Otto Wagner, comes in, who really does feel passionately about this and he feels like he wants to create art. And we like that idea as well. So we've tried to replicate that as much as possible. And of course, if you're doing this level of detail, you can really start to tease apart elements of the wreck and start zooming in on certain areas. We can break apart wrecks into different levels. We can start creating the real rooms inside them and allow to be able to produce penetration maps like this one of the Kittiwake, which is on the west coast of Grand Cayman. This is another penetration map that we created. These appeared in an issue of Scuba Diving magazine a couple of years ago. So this is a penetration of Lady Luck, which is a wreck that many of you may be familiar with just off the coast of South Florida there. So that's the detail that we were trying to get out of these maps. But there are many other techniques that we could use. We started with sonar, looking at whether that was feasible. Other options include photogrammetry.
And I'll pick up from here. Photogrammetry has a lot of promise, and it's still something that we are working to incorporate into our process. But one of the challenges for those of you who aren't familiar with what photogrammetry is, it is used extensively in terrestrial environments where archaeologists actually use photogrammetry to create the more accurate models of archaeological digs than they can actually achieve through their own measurements. And that's because they take thousands of photos in very controlled environments to feed them into a computer system that creates a working model. The challenge is that as every diver knows, underwater conditions aren't the same. You get scatter from particulates in the water, you get low vis environments, you get fish swimming in front of you. And so and it's very challenging to use photogrammetry for a wreck that's 500 feet long. The total number of images that are required are thousands upon thousands, and it takes many people days of diving in order to achieve the level of accuracy that you need and the overlap in the images.
You can imagine that if there's a coral head on the sea floor, or a relatively small contained structure that you can go around and do a complete circuit of and take the required number of photographs, you can build up enough photographs of that one object from different angles that you can produce a very accurate three-dimensional model of that structure through photogrammetry. But the larger it is, the more potential shadow zones that can occur in a photogrammetry map. Very much like sonar to a certain degree, in that you really have to make sure that you take enough photographs to be able to cover the entire area. So it starts, the system starts to fall down a little bit when you're dealing with large areas. Sorry.
And so that allowed us to come up with what we kind of term as photogrammetry light, which is our own kind of version. If you want to go to the next slide, Ian. Our own kind of version of photogrammetry is based on a lot of the same principles, where you're taking photos from a set distance, a set angle, perpendicular to the object. And as Ian clicks through, you'll see these are images taken from the stern moving towards the bow. So we're far enough away that the visibility still allows us to take a series of photos. And now he's gonna go back again. This would not be enough detail for a true photogrammetry algorithm to incorporate based on where the technology is now. But we can go in these kind of environment. This is in Northwest Florida. So as you can see, the visibility is not what it is in a place like Grand Cayman. So you need to still be kind of close. And this is only about a third of the vessel. But we can take photos like these and incorporate them, use them in our process, which is a form of photogrammetry, but basically it's a manual version of it. But when we couple this process with distance measurements to confirm scale, additional video, we have depth sounders, we can kind of bring to bear a number of different data collection processes in order to manually put it all together to create a model. And basically it's a simplified version of a lot of the other mapping that's out there, even to the point where we're able to train people to collect the data for us. And so this is how it starts coming together. So if in that middle stripe, you can see the port side of that vessel, the pictures that Ian showed start from the stern on the right side and move forward. So we can overlap these pictures. You'll see above that the superstructure the front and the rear of the superstructure. There's the stern of the vessel. Using these photos that we take, we're manually overlapping it to identify the key features of the wreck. Top-down photos allow us to create a total mosaic of the ship. That right below that you see data that was available of this wreck via sonar. And so we can combine that. As you can see in the sonar image, the actual sonar image has the superstructure slightly askew because that's just how the algorithm processed that data. We know for a fact that the superstructure is straight. And so we can combine both data sets, both the pictures that we've taken, the sonar that's available, to create a model that is much more accurate. And on the next slide, we'll see the clean model that is basically what we produce from all the data we collect. That's from the photos. If sonar is available, we'll use that. If we also take videos, extensive video details, we'll take measurements to ensure that the proportions are right. And that comes together with this kind of a clean, crisp model. The beauty of this process is also we can manually adjust the model down the road. As we all know, the marine environment is not static. Storms come through. Over time, currents like the salt water will corrode the steel vessels. And so damage is inevitable, change is inevitable. And so what we can do is we can take this model, and if we hear from the local dive shops that after a big storm's come through and the top of the bridge has been torn off, as has happened in a number of cases, we can go back into the model and essentially change it and adapt it and then re-render it. So our goal is we take this model and then we apply textures to it. And it looks like this. And this is it's very similar to what the Vandenberg image that Ian showed you before. It is what we're going for. And we feel like this image is a lot more practical and useful from a dive briefing point of view than that sonar picture that started off in the presentation a little bit earlier. You just get a lot more detail. So that's in a quick nutshell how we do wrecks. And so when we moved on to reefs, we'll just quickly go through this.
A little more complicated.
Yeah, as you can imagine, this is a 500. What you see here is an aerial drone shot of 500 feet wide of reef, and so it creates a real challenge from the point of view of taking pictures all the way around and what we were describing with photogrammetry. And yet,
just to give you a sense of the scale here, what you see in the middle of the picture here, you see the line with the circle. That's a buoy with a buoy line coming off it. So that gives you a sense of the
and you can just actually see right out of the bottom of the image is the bow of a 44-foot Newton dive boat. So you have a better sense of scale. So this is
Sorry, I'll just jump in
Yeah, go ahead.
quickly. In order to do, because of the complexity of looking at a much larger site with a reef instead of a single point, even though it can be a large point as a wreck, we have to start adding other elements in here. So we've talked a little bit about sonar, which we use sort of handheld underwater. We're using a photogrammetry method. With the reefs now, we're adding other systems such as the drone technology to get aerial views, which we can use to sort of clean up the reef and get a sense of what it looks like in terms of the outline and also the edge of the reef, but also GPS tracking that allows us to basically run along the length of the wall there and get a sense of the shape of the reef from there too.
Yeah, so in this case, these are the ideal conditions for mapping a reef. This is the crystal clear waters off Grand Cayman. You have really dark reef right next to white crystalline sand. So you have a really good contrast between them. Super clear from a drone taking a picture. You've seen we've added the outlines. As Ian mentioned, we can use a GPS tracker, like a waterproof GPS in a dive buoy that's kind of hung above us as we go and chart along the edge of a drop off if we can't see that clearly in the drone. And so we pull together using all of these different measurements and depth measurements under there is this. It's a contour map of the reef, and you'll see that it gets darker. So the black is the deepest and the white is the shallowest. We call this a height map. And so this height map represents depths across the entire area that we want to do it, plus the outlines and the shapes of the relative reef. We then take this and we add to it all the photos and the videos, and we create this, which is a 3D sculpture of that section of reef and drop off. This is viewed from the side of the reef. And so the bottom represents probably about 200 feet in depth. Just to give you kind of sense of the scale, you'll notice that it gets a lot less detailed down there because we are not diving down that deep. So we take this model, and this is the equivalent to that clean model of the wreck that we had before. To this, we can apply textures, coral textures, sand textures, shadows, shape. It all kind of comes to life. Interestingly enough, we are using photogrammetry principles to develop a library of corals so that we can actually, as we go through reefs and even wrecks, we can identify key corals and apply them from our library in order to increase the accuracy of these maps that we produce. So a reef that has a lot of staghorn coral will actually be able to render soon with staghorn coral on it. Or a reef that has sea fans and brain coral and just a few soft corals, we can render using those that are in our library. And we're going to keep growing our library over time. So with this done, a textured reef, then we can add to that the drone shot oriented differently to show where the coastline is relative to the reef. Grand Cayman, again, the reefs were right next to the shore. And so we are able to mold the images from the shore to the reef and give people a much better sense of what it's like to dive here. When they're jumping in the boat, they see the landmark. For decades, diving in Grand Cayman was based on, the house that was on the hill or the black rock that was over here. And so matching up the coastline with the reef was really important when we were mapping this, to kind of as a nod, even though everything's done by GPS nowadays, as a bit of a nod to creating that nod to the history of that part of the reef. So this is just the image. Then, as you can imagine, we can apply any information. So those yellow dots there are the swim-throughs, which are sometimes hard to make out yourself when you're just looking at the image. The orange line is a suggested dive. A lot of the times we'll leave that off for briefing charts because dive operators will have their own. But if you're buying a card and you want to know where to go because you're diving yourself, those yellow dots are the species where we were seeing, Ian was mentioning that grouper, moray eels, there's a number of species that are very site-specific and location-specific. Particularly in wrecks, you'll often see wrecks in Florida that have a resident Goliath grouper in the bridge. So we would put a dot that represented the Goliath grouper in the bridge of that wreck to say, by the way, there might be a grouper there waiting for you. Some GPS, some of the text covers some of the history. If there's a background story to why the site got its name, we'll add that in. a brief description of whether or not for people to look for swim-throughs. And there you have it. You have a bit of a, a briefing, an understanding of what this site is, much better than what someone might be able to draw on a whiteboard, or much better than, just jumping in yourself and trying to figure out where the wall is and hoping that you actually find the interesting swim through or two that are at the site.
And once we've created this kind of map, there's a range of different ways that we can use it. We can create these as waterproof briefing charts that dive professionals can draw on directly to mark the route when they do their dive briefings. We can produce weatherproof beach signage for shore accessible sites, so that people can basically stand there, take a look at what the site looks like, and walk straight off the beach and be able to do the dive. We can 3D print these, of course. And we can create animations, because these are three-dimensional models that we can manipulate. We can produce videos that allow you to tour what the site looks like, and move it around in this way. This is a wreck from Bonaire, Hilma Hooker. I've got another animation. This is just a basic sort of 360 spin of Okinawa. Obviously, a lot of you may have dived that wreck, as it is now sort of lying on the sand, slightly askew after Hurricane Irma. And what we can also do is put them into our guidebooks. And this has been a real sort of like labor of love for us. We quickly realized that once we had enough sites in a certain area, it'd be great to be able to put them into a guidebook format that people could use to really sort of get to grips with the whole local area. Snorkel sites, dive sites, we even throw surfing sites in there, and to give people a view of what lies beyond the shoreline. So many dive guides that exist in bookshops these days, they stop at the shoreline. They give you a wonderful overview of what it's like to travel to a certain area, but in so many of the areas in the tropics, people are wanting to get in the water and explore the marine environment, and there's nothing about that in these dive guides. So what we wanted to do is pick up where the standard dive guides left off, like Lonely Planet, and give people a view into what lies beneath the surface. So these two books are the books that we did for the area around you guys, Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach. Of course, as we do these dive guides, it really allows us to drill down into each individual site and talk about what is involved in the dive, but also the backstory about how these wrecks came to be. Give a few different angles and the species and the routes, and start basically walking people through the site and talking about the backstory. The history of some of these wrecks is fantastic, and we discovered this when we were working on our two most recent books, particularly the one for Northwest Florida. Now there's some historical wrecks in that area that have fascinating backstories, and we really love sort of telling those stories. These are the two books that we just came out with over the past year while we're in our COVID lockdown. Grand Cayman and Northwest Florida, we had collected a lot of data over the previous year before we were sort of locked away in our various offices. So we were able to work on these two books and get them through to the finish line over the past year. So we had a lot of fun doing that. That brings us to 6 books in total now that we have, and we have 2 more that we are currently working on. This is a little bit of a sneak peek into the next 2 books. We're about halfway through the Florida Keys right now. This is the first time we've actually shown anyone these images of what we figure the covers will look like. So the Florida Keys, we're about halfway through right now. And the same for the sister islands. We've mapped pretty much all of Cayman Brac and about half of Little Cayman. So we need to get back down to these places as soon as we can. Hopefully it's this summer, but we're keeping our fingers crossed that travel reopens and we can get back to work, because we're starting to dry out here on land. And that brings us to the end of the presentation. If anyone has any questions, incidentally, this QR code, if you're interested in scanning it with your phone, it will take you to a sign-up page for our mailing list. So you can just drop your email address in there, and we'll be able to keep you up to date with where we're at with various mapping projects, and And we also send out, little special offers and freebies and things like that. So please sign up if you get the chance. And any questions? Nicole, are you there?
Yeah, there we go.
Excellent, guys. Well, we do have some questions. A couple of things. One question was, how can you order a 3D print of a specific wreck?
So that right now we have worked with a couple of partners who are 3D printers who are tentatively trying to figure out what we can do. Reefs translate really well into 3D printing. The challenge with the wrecks is, as anyone can know, our models are very detailed and intricate with masts and posts sticking out and stuff like that. And so we are currently working with them to figure out how we can simplify, if there's a way to simplify some of our more complicated wrecks to allow them to be printed without creating, the physics of the 3D printing are preventing us from printing all of our wrecks. But it is something that we're investigating. Certainly not that's going to be, I think it's something we'd be working with a partner. I don't think Ian and I and Otto are going to try and have a 3D printer in our basement that we're going to try and pump out models for.
But the question could be about a 3D print, like a 3D model, or it could be a print of a 3D site, right?
I think it was. It was about printing.
This is a question actually about getting a print of one of the 3D wrecks we have. I mean, we obviously we produce a lot of these in handheld card format that people can take in the water, but we're also now doing these wall charts. And we've got about a dozen up online at the moment, and we can print these and ship them out. But basically, if there's any site that anyone is interested in getting a large format print of, just drop us an email, and we can get that printed and sent off to you, no problem.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the wrecks and the images that we deal with, is that essentially we can re-render them at any size. So we've worked with people in Barbados to, how big was the sign in Barbados? Like 10 feet or 20 feet was the design, so that we can wrap buildings in these things. It's just a question of time and rendering power, which is definitely one of the benefits of working off these kinds of 3D models.
So you're talking about how we can get books and the slates and prints, but I do know that some of the boats lately, they have been installing like TVs on the boat that they can project stuff onto there. So do you guys have a digital version that people can buy to be able to put that on?
I mean, we theoretically could. To date, most of the dive operators that we've spoken to have not wanted to go that way, just because of the challenges of digital technology and saltwater environments.
Right.
Most of the liveaboard, like that's a conversation that we've had a lot more with liveaboards that have the kind of dry room where they'll do their briefing in the comfort of a large, enclosed area before they go outside. But we certainly have the ability to do that, because we can create any image that we want to do. And, we've been talking about trying to work with certain partners about licensing the images use online. There is inevitably the risk that the more digital you make an image, the more inherently it is difficult to control who uses that image. So, having images out there that then people can just basically reproduce and use willy-nilly becomes a little bit more of a challenge. But there is absolutely ways to get around that stuff.
Yeah, one thing that we've been talking about doing for a while now, we have a fairly sizable catalog of dive and snorkel sites, is putting all this into an app format that people can use fully digitally. We've been thinking about that for a long time, and it's something that is definitely sort of moved to the front of the queue now. So, making these more available on digital formats is something that we'll definitely be looking at in the next year.
Okay, awesome. All right, so they want to know what camera system are you guys using to capture the sites?
That's a very common question. When we started, we were using a very involved digital SLR with a very fancy custom built Icolite waterproof housing, and this thing was huge, and fortuitously it leaked on one trip. And so we had to go with our backup GoPros, and lo and behold, wouldn't you know, our GoPros collect data and information and video footage just as easily. So Paralens, GoPro, the one thing that we have to be careful of, GoPros that don't have the ability to compensate for the fish bowl effect can distort the image enough that we can get around it, but it just adds to the processing time afterwards, and you need to ensure that there's greater overlap. So anything that gives you a semi-undistorted view of the water, Paralens, GoPro, TK5s or whatever, like whatever you need, as long as it's got good light capture and can present a good version of the image of what you see. As Ian pointed out at one point in time, you have to be careful. Like, we don't need 4K. You don't need the high resolution. You take so many images that if everything had to be a 4K resolution, basically we need a computer to carry one dive trip's worth of data, which is something else we've also learned from the hard way. But like, what you basically, you saw the quality of the images, the better the conditions, the fewer images you need, the less strong, a less powerful GoPro or a camera you need. But obviously, when you get into darker environments, you get into lower visibility, then the capacity of the camera has to go up a little bit. But it is pretty simple.
Okay, somebody wants to know, does the sonar mess with the marine life?
That is a Pandora. Certainly the sonar that we use does not.
Okay.
No.
I am not going to. Our little handheld clicker just literally pings one shot that goes, that bulwark is 10 feet away. I won't weigh in on whether or not sonar in general impacts marine mammals. I think that's beyond the scope of our conversation. I imagine it does in certain instances. Certainly high frequency sonar has been shown, but that has nothing to do with the processes that we do. Well, or you could even say all the more better to be just taking pictures and video, because that definitely does not impact the video, marine mammals and fish life.
Awesome. All right, we got somebody wants to know, are you planning to come to Roatan Bay Islands in Honduras?
Patrick, yes.
Yes.
We would love to come to the Bay Islands and Roatan. Over the years, we've talked to a lot of people in the Bay Islands, and we had a conversation with someone just last month in Utila. So this is something that is very high up on the list. I sent Patrick an email actually a couple of weeks ago. So we'll have to have a conversation.
Patrick, let's talk.
Bay Islands. There's a few places that often come up as like destination that people ask us for a lot. One is Curacao, another is Cozumel, the Keys, which is obviously something that we're working on right now, and the Bay Islands of Honduras have come up countless times. These are obviously like great dive destinations that a lot of people want to check out. We're starting to do a little bit of mapping work in Grenada right now, which is great, and we've finally got to the end of our northwest Florida book. I see a question by Dan here about the North Florida Panhandle, the reef guide. So that one I mentioned in the presentation, we've actually just got it to the finish line. It's available right now for pre-order. It's publicly available. It launches next month. So that's going to be hot off the press. We're really excited. Yeah. That whole area of Northwest Florida, I think we were really blown away by what we saw up there. That the diversity of the diving. I mean, when people talk about diving in Florida, that there's a lot of people are thinking Southern Florida and the Keys. Of course, everyone knows down Palm Beach and Broward County and into the Keys, there's just excellent diving. And anyone you talk to about Northwest Florida will say like, oh, there's really great diving here, but you don't think about it necessarily straight away. And we got to do a few trips up there and collect the data for those sites, and we were literally blown away, right?
One of the other things I'll add about that is it was one of the first places that we were able to work with local folks to help collect some of the data that new dive sites that came in, or things that we weren't able to get to while we were up there. And that's something that when people ask us where are we going to go next, I feel like there's a real opportunity with this kind of new model that has been almost forced on us by the pandemic, where we started having conversations with Grenada, with Bali at one point, in terms of having people, training people to collect the data using the tools they have on hand, but collect the data that they can then send us, and we can start compiling these map rec images, reef images. And what it does is allows us to expand much quicker and provide people with these reefs and these wrecks that they see on a regular basis and they love. And they want to see both represented out there to shout out that they're, Roatan has great diving, Cozumel has great diving, Northwest Florida has great diving. And so they can show people. And so there's been a huge level of enthusiasm from local operators and local divers who've reached out to us. And up until this year, we've often been like, I don't know how that would work. It's really tough. Some people would often have like a single wreck. It's just a marquee wreck. And it just wouldn't make sense for us to send a team down there to map. Whereas now, having worked out how to train people up and how to collect this data remotely, it's like, oh, if you've got a wreck that you can get eyes on and get video of, this is great. We can do this up for you. If there's demand for it, if there's if there's interest in it, we don't have to send anyone there. And so this remote data collection, the process that we laid out, in part has been adjusted over time in a way to allow people to collect this data themselves and send us pictures and video and stuff like that, which isn't possible when you're using, a sonar dragged behind a boat. It's just not what people have available to them. So it's a really encouraging development in the model. So,
obviously you guys are focusing on other places. And so sometimes like down in Broward County or the Keys, we get these hurricanes that come through and, they mess with the wrecks and they mess with what you guys have mapped. Like, how often are you able to get your locals to let you know, hey guys, this wreck is completely moved and you need to come map it again? Like are you guys able to work with the locals to get updates on what you've already mapped?
Well, it is the story of Hurricane Irma for us in Florida back in 2017. We were down there mapping all the wrecks for the Fort Lauderdale guidebook, Fort Lauderdale area guidebook, and we finished the mapping work and we took off to Barbados. And while we're in Barbados, Hurricane Irma came through Florida, and it was pretty soon, just within a couple of days, people had said that, well, that was quite a storm and there may be some changes to the wrecks. And about a week to 10 days later, people started dropping into the water. And the one of the most interesting things we discovered was Okinawa had only just been dropped as a wreck about a month before. It had been dropped about a month before the hurricane came through. And someone dropped down onto that wreck, the GPS coordinates where it had been dropped, and it was gone. It was literally not there anymore. And they started doing a search pattern trying to find this wreck and found that it had moved about 300 feet away across the sand. And several other wrecks that people visited over the next few weeks, such as Ancient Mariner, Rodeo 25, Captain Dan. They all came back with changes to the wreck. So we had locals go out and take photographs of the wreck so we could take a look at what changed in our models. And as Pete was saying in the presentation, the fact that we're creating these models in the software rather than using a full photogrammetry method means that we can just adjust our models without having to go back and remap the entire area. So we can, if there's a smokestack missing, we can just remove that from the model. And if Okinawa has rolled over onto its side, which is what happened, and some of the structures have been torn off, we can just make those changes to the model and re-render it. So it's great that it's frustrating when we hear about things that have changed, but it's not a difficult process to do that, and it allows us to work, like you say, with local divers to make those changes and update the maps. We had an example just literally as we were finishing Northwest Florida, right?
I was about to say a slightly bigger. I didn't think, and I hoped he'd never have a situation that would top our Fort Lauderdale print fiasco of having to change it after printing cards. But 3 days before submitting our final proofread PDF for the Northwest Florida publisher, this is what we understood the El Dorado Wreck, which is a relatively new artificial reef that is off Panama City up in Northwest Florida. This is what we had the image in the book. We sent it off to our reviewers, and everything, like half the reviewers were like, everything's fine. And then someone was like, wait, I don't think El Dorado looks like that anymore. This is what El Dorado looks like. It is the bow tilted up and a debris field that extends behind it, kind of like a large giant decided to step on it, which just goes to show you the power of ocean, because this wasn't even a hurricane. This was just some serious storms. So we were able to work with a dive shop within 24 hours, get some images, get a description, mock up the model, have it run through everyone at that dive shop that had ever laid eyes in other dive shops, being like, does this look good? Does this look good? Does this look good? Is this okay? Can we go with it? We texture it, we run it, and swapped it out in the book literally as it went to print. So will that happen? It's inevitable. In a case like El Dorado, that's dramatic, where most often for wrecks like the Black Bart, which is another very popular wreck up there, the bridge, the roof of the bridge of the superstructure has been ripped off. The image that we have still suffices. We'll be able to update that whenever it comes out, because someone dropping in on a wreck, you still get 99% of the information that you need for the briefing. The challenge is when you have so much profound change to a wreck, if someone's going in expecting this, like they're not going to know what they're looking at when they drop in. And so that's why we've just reprinted it, and we're going to be able to push those out. And we're really happy to get that into the book. So it does happen. The catastrophic changes we're hoping less frequent, because that's when things really go to pot. But
changes occur for regular guidebooks as well. You know, like every time a Lonely Planet comes out for a certain location, you know, restaurants close, prices change, and things need to be updated. So, you know, if we estimate in the marine environment that, you know, we need to come back in and make some changes. You know, every few years we'll take a look, and if there's a need to remodel and get some more data, we can do that. Plug in the new maps and do a second edition or a third edition, whatever we need to do.
So when you guys look at the comments section, you'll see some people are giving you some, hey guys, here's some updates from Fort Lauderdale.
Thanks, Alejandro. Yeah, I saw the comment about the Tracy's. We'll be in touch.
Yeah, we need.
But I do have some of our tech divers. They're interested in knowing if you guys are going to put maybe like a tech book for the South Florida area together, where you can, I know you have the Hydro Atlantic, like, right? But just a specific book that would be just for like the technical dives. And
I don't think we would create a specific book for tech divers, but we can certainly create more maps for tech depth wrecks. We've had several people actually reach out to us from Southern Florida saying that they would like to see more tech depth wrecks. And we can go ahead and create those. That is definitely an area, I think, where it would help to have the input of local people who are out diving those. If we can talk to people about getting the images that we need, we're more than happy to create those maps and make them available. But we need to work with people who are going down to visit those to be able to get the images and the data that we need. So by all means, reach out to us and we can work on that.
Yeah, cards are a lot easier to do for targeted wrecks. A book, when Ian mentioned that these books were labors of love, he was not lying. And so to create a book for a target environment, a small subset of an industry, it just becomes challenging from the numbers point of view, from the return on that. Whereas cards are like cards are a lot easier. There's just a lot more that goes into books that we found out the hard way versus just if you've got 10 cards, hey, you've pretty much got a book, throw them together. I did see one comment that I wanted to address. Phyllis mentioned the pictures that we have up on our wall. This is of Captain Tibbetts in Cayman Brack, and Ian has Kittiwake over his shoulder and Diver's Den over the other shoulder. Large format prints are available on our website under wall art. So reefsmartguides.com. Look in the online store under wall art, and pretty much any image we have on any card can be created as a poster. We just have a subset of that available because some of the most popular ones are there.
All right, so the question was, in the future, are you thinking about mapping any caves?
So the answer is we do have a few caves that we already have maps of. Blue Holes, Blue Corner in Palau, we have a card for that. Chandelier Cave in Palau. Those were done with software on our process that was a little bit earlier. We do things a little bit differently, and that shift in the software that we use and the process that we use that we had highlighted earlier in the presentation for that Grand Cayman reef wall allows us to model in great detail even things in enclosed spaces. So we will be modeling, as I mentioned, we'll be modeling Vortex Spring going up later in next month to model Vortex Spring all the way down to the access point to the caves. And so we'll be able to, the challenge with caves is then you need multiple images to show different aspects of it. The presentation side becomes challenging, but from the actual mapping side and the modeling side and the texturing side, we certainly can do that.
All right. Okay, so that was awesome. We are done with the questions. And so let's go ahead. I'm going to hide this slide here, and I'm going to bring in the screen that gives us our raffle. So if you guys, let's see, here we go. There we go. If you guys registered before 6:45 on our Eventbrite, I have put your names into the name random picker, and we are going to raffle off one of the Reef Smart Guide books. You can choose either the Palm Beach or the Fort Lauderdale one. So when you're the winner, I will email you and you can let me know which one you want. And so let's go ahead and raffle off that one. Here we go. And the winner is Tina Fisher. Tina, if you're listening, give us a thumbs up, give us a smiley face, give us a heart emoji. Let us know that you're excited that you're the winner. Awesome. All right, Tina. Okay, and we also said we were going to raffle off the new print poster. It's laminated. It's the fish ID. You guys, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, so that features about a little over 120 species that are common in South Florida and the Keys, and it reflects a lot of the information that we had on a card that someone came to us and asked if they could make it into a poster. So that I won't say is to scale because of the difficulties of doing that, but there's a lot of information there, including where we could feature species over a reef substrate and over a sand substrate based on what was along the bottom of the poster. So there's a little bit of ecological information snuck in there as well, rather than it just being a straight species ID.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and see who the winner is. Hit this green button, random name picker. Let's see. Nicole, oh gosh, Alarid. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. Nicole, you are the winner of our poster. So here's that poster again. All right, we will make sure to email you and you can let us know which shop you can pick up at. And we've got these guys here. Great presentation. We love the answers that you guys gave and the presentation, and we look forward to seeing more from you guys soon.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Nicole. It was great. Thank you so much for hosting us. It was great to have the opportunity to explain a bit more about what we do to folks.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Yep, and make sure that you're following them on their social media. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, and you can always go to their website. You can come in here to 4C. You can buy some of their cool swag that they've created, and we appreciate it. All right, guys, well, have a great rest of the evening. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.